Welcome, friends, to episode 16 of the Bible Yogi. I'm your host, Douglas Roberts. Hope you had a good Christmas. Mine was spectacular as usual. Um, so, today we're going to be covering part 3 of the story of Joseph from the book of Genesis, chapter 37. Um, in previous chapters, we learned that Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob, who later became Israel. And he had just been sold into slavery by his brothers and shown to be dead to his father Israel. Then, when he got to Egypt, the Midianites sold him to a man named Potiphar, who had him trusted him so much after a short while that he put him in charge of his whole house. Then Potiphar's wife got the hots for him, and that led to Joseph getting thrown into prison after he spurned her advances. And once he was in jail, the warden noticed just how efficient and trustworthy Joseph was, and so he set him over the whole prison. So now he's running the entire prison. While he was in prison, he interpreted a dream by Pharaoh's butler and Pharaoh's baker, and both dreams were interpreted correctly, and both came true in only a matter of a few days. So Joseph languishes in prison, and now we take up the story again. My outline, or my premise for even the entire story of Joseph, is that he's a major messianic type. And what does this mean? It basically means that things that happen to Joseph, or things that he says and does, are mirrored and reflected in the life of Christ. So we call that a messianic type. It's a prophetic. It's a form of prophecy, and it's one of the more interesting and obvious forms of prophecy. So here, Genesis chapter 41, verses 1 through 8, Pharaoh has a dream. And what is this dream about? As you can see here, you've got one cow who's sitting in the nice green pasture, and then you got this one sad cow who is standing in the middle of a desert, and they're just side by side. I asked, Bing Image to give me a sick cow, but its sickly cows were just awful. They made them look like skeletons, and I want to scare people, but they were just bad. So this was the best image I felt. Pretend there's 7 of each. All right, so here we go. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow. So you can take my 1 cow to symbolize 7 cows. I know it's tricky, but try to stay with me. And behold, 7 other kine, that's dairy cows, came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke. That's a pretty freaky dream, wouldn't you say? These thin cows eating the other ones. And he slept and dreamt the second time, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. And behold, 7 thin ears of corn, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And behold, Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men thereof, and Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them to Pharaoh. Now, I don't know, it may come up later, or maybe it's implied here, but when the thin cows ate the fat cows, they were still thin, still skinny. Genesis chapter 41, verses 9 through 22. The Pharaoh's chief butler has a recollection. If you remember, when Joseph was in the prison and he interpreted the the butler's dream correctly. He said, "Don't forget about me, by the way. I've been imprisoned unjustly." And the butler goes his way and never thinks about Joseph again until the Pharaoh has this crazy dream. And Pharaoh is upset about it. So here's the butler. He's been restored to his position as butler to Pharaoh, and he's handing him his wine. And he goes, "Hey, I remembered something." Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, "I do remember my faults this day. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be in a big hurry to bring up all my past indiscretions to the person I, screwed up for or whatever." But he remembered him, and finally he goes, "Okay." Pharaoh was wroth, mad, with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, in prison, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was with us this young man in Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to the dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me and he restored unto mine office, and him he hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph. And they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. So I don't know if it says it, but we can kind of guess that Pharaoh was probably only 18, 19 years old. Remember, he was 17 when he went to look for his brothers. And here it is just pretty much a short while later. I think a season, maybe. So let's just say 18, 19, something like that. A young kid. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of a river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in the meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine, and when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored at the beginning. So I awoke. Aha! It mentions it right here. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears, withered, thin, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. Genesis 41, 25 through 32. Joseph interprets the dream. Now, before I read this, what do you think it means? Pause the video and see if you can figure it out. Well, I know I never did. I had no idea what in the world cows eating cows is supposed to mean. I had no idea. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he's about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears, blasted with the east wind, shall be 7 years of famine. And this is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh, what God is about to do, he showed unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. So did anybody in the audience guess that that's what the dream meant? I know, like I said, I didn't. I was, okay, crazy. Genesis 41, 33, 44. Who should save the world from the famine? Now therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land in the 7 plenteous years. So one might wonder, why only a 5th part? You know, if you think about it, it's 7 good years, 7 bad years. Wouldn't you need like to take up 50%? Well, I guess not, because the good years had so much abundance that 20% of that abundance was going to be enough. And we'll see that it ends up being enough. It's at least to keep everybody alive. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this, a man whom the Spirit of God is in? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God has showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne shall I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it on Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the 2nd chariot which he had had, and they cried before him, Bow the knee. And he was made ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all of the land of Egypt. And so I got this image from Bing Image Creator. I thought it was pretty good. You know, there's Joseph merrily becoming the ruler of all of Egypt, and there's the Pharaoh, basically saying, aha, you're the new governor, essentially. But it's important to know that Egypt was, at that time, the largest kingdom in all the world, at least the known world. We still have the pyramids and other ancient buildings that were built during the Egyptian Empire. It was a very huge, very large empire, and it's, like I said, its artifacts, the King Tutankhamun tomb and all that it was a very rich and very huge empire, and now all of a sudden Joseph's the ruler of it. Why is this significant? Well, you remember Joseph a couple of chapters ago? He had this dream where he said, and he told his brothers who hated him anyway, and he said, hey, I had this dream where the sun, the moon, the stars all bowed down to me. What do you, how about that? And they said, what, you're going to rule over us? And bam, it came true. And here he is, just a few years later. He's king over all, not really king, but he is second in command, if not fully in command, except for Pharaoh in the throne, over all the land of Egypt. So that dream came true also. So what we want to draw from this is that, remember, Joseph was thrown into a pit, and then he was presented to his dad, Israel, literally, as being dead. And as far as Israel is concerned, he is dead. And now, but you and me, because we've been following the story, we know that he's still alive. And when he finally appears to Israel, it's gonna be as though he is resurrected from the dead. And so there's that parallel with Christ. Christ was resurrected from the dead. And what happened once Christ was raised from the dead? Well, glad you asked. He became ruler over everything. Revelation 1, verse 5. And from Jesus Christ, the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. Revelation 19:16. He has a garment, and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And Ephesians 1:19-23 probably spells it out the most clear. And what is the exceeding greatness of his power to usward who believe, according to the working of his mighty power, which he wrought in Christ when he raised him from the dead and set him at his own right hand in the heavenly places. Right? So God is analogous to Pharaoh here, far above all principality and power and might and dominion and every name that is named, not only in this world, but also in that which is to come, and hath put all things under his feet, and gave him to be the head over all things to the church, which is his body, the fullness of him that filleth all in all. So that's why Joseph was a very, very important messianic type, because it was believed that he was dead, and then he became ruler over the largest empire in the known physical world. Jesus died, was resurrected, and became ruler over everything, over the church, over kings, over lords. All principalities and powers are under his dominion. And with that, I will let this chapter, this episode be concluded, and I hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, everybody, take care.